go back and visit some of the tragedies purported by the mainstream narrative of this decade, you think of Ukraine, COVID, January 6th. So it's also important bringing up and revisiting the case of George Floyd. Now, this was an extremely sensitive subject at the time, and many were unable to talk about it. If you had a counter narrative, you were deemed as hateful, a Nazi, a white supremacist. Many people were called those things by just simply questioning what happened that day and questioning why a mainstream narrative had to be put into place off of one isolated event. That's the common pattern of all the things I listed before. When you question the mainstream narrative, you get demonized and you get criticized. But why is that? Why are we unable to have open debates and express our First Amendment about issues like this? So the George Floyd incident happened in 2020. He was a black man who was a known felon, assaulted pregnant women, known drug addict and dealer. So he did not look like a very good guy on paper. He was openly doing drugs in the street. He was intoxicated with 7 hardcore substances, which you can see in the autopsy right here. So they go to arrest Floyd, obviously for being on the street, breaking the law. He then resists for about 15 minutes. He hysterically starts crying and starts begging the police to let him go and tell him he didn't do it and he did nothing wrong. Just a typical delusional arrestee. But you notice if you watch the full clip, he didn't comply at all. He thought that he did nothing wrong, but obviously the autopsy and the legal system proves that he did, and he's resisting arrest. So you can't defend someone that does that. He resists for 15 minutes, makes it extremely difficult for the police officers not to use any outside force. And keep in mind, this guy is intoxicated on 7 hardcore substances, methamphetamine, heroin. I mean, it's honestly crazy how this guy was even operating the way that he was as long as he was before he overdosed. But keep in mind, someone who is resisting police force, who's throwing themselves around, sweating like crazy on all those hardcore drugs, I can't imagine what your heart rate would be and how your body wouldn't go in a full collapse mode. So with all that into account, you can see that George Floyd was doing so much damage to his body on top of the resisting arrest and police force. But when it comes to it, he resisted. He fell on the ground. They finally pinned him down to where he was, they could subdue him. So Floyd's on the ground hysterically resisting arrest, while Derek Chauvin, he's a white police officer, and he, for a brief moment, puts his knee on George Floyd's neck, which again, there is an issue there, but that was proven that that wasn't the cause of death. But yet, it was the perfect time for liberal media, and really mainstream media in general, to purport a narrative that America has to be automatically racist. It's crazy. And anyone was demonized for talking about this in 2020. I actually remember I tweeted something, not even really as a counter narrative. I just simply said, everyone needs to stop freaking out. Justice will prevail. This is one incident. How are you going to sit here and say that America is this awful, evil place when it's clearly not? People have just been convinced by the mainstream that it is. When I simply said that there will be justice here, I was attacked by literally everybody that I know. It was insane. Like, all these medicated NPCs just attacked me and said, "How dare you say that? How dare you?" And it's just like, it's astonishing because you just see how these people have been led to believe lies their entire life. They're headline readers. They don't actually have the ability to deter thoughts and think for themselves. They just believe what they're told and they repeat it. It's really sad, and I saw the truth of that in 2020. I'm true to myself, I'm true to the American people, and I think we need to counter these mainstream lies. This was one of the worst things that happened this decade, one of the worst things people fell for. If you remember, everybody put a black screen on their Instagram page. I think everyone should be offended by it because what Black Lives Matter did is completely divisive. They're literally a terrorist organization. If you remember, they did nothing but riot and burn couches in the street. What's actually The Black Lives Matter overall riots claimed more lives than what happened on January 6th. I know that'll be a controversial statement. Hopefully it doesn't get me taken down, but it's the truth. Look it up. Numbers don't lie. But what does lie is information and propagandized events that can be used to make something that was really small and isolated turn into a bigger deal. That's how they control people. That's how they divide people. This is one of the most divisive things to happen this century, I believe, that most people actually fell for. And to me, it's a compliance test, because what did they get you to do after you fell for the George Floyd incident? Oh, well, we have to stay locked in because of COVID. It's scary. Oh, 6 months later, let's take a vaccine. We don't know anything about it. You know, the usual vaccines take 6 to 7 years, if not more, for a proper solution. But screw it. Let's just take it. It's all a compliance test. Now they're doing it again. That proves he died from fentanyl and possibly a heart attack, and not from Derek Chauvin kneeling on his neck, and strictly from that. And you have to figure Chauvin's been sentenced for 22 years to life. So if that's been proven, should he really serve that sentence? I don't think so. I think that's something that's possibly able to be pardoned. That's pure corruption right there. They used both of them as examples, George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. There's monuments of George Floyd, and Derek Chauvin's in jail. And yet, the narrative that they try to purport and portray to everyone, it sank in with a lot. So many people gave in. And I think this should be a key lesson to everyone moving forward for all the things they try to purport, if you haven't figured it out already. It's up to people not to give into that. I remember every single one of you who put those black screens on your Instagram. I'll never forget. You need to listen to what I'm saying and other people like me who are speaking the truth and want nothing but to find the truth and not politically swayed by one side. If you gave into this scam, you're an NPC, you're a non-player character. You gave in to what they wanted you to. In reality, I see you just as guilty as a person who purports a narrative, because you're giving in and you're harping on everybody else who goes against that. You're just as guilty. I don't feel bad for you. Again, these people are drugged up on Zoloft and Seroquel. Always keep that in mind. Celebrating fentanyl dealers who assaulted pregnant women and building statues out of them is completely ridiculous. It's a disgrace to this country. I was more skeptical than everybody was when this first happened, and it's pretty funny how everything works out, and I tend to be right on this. And it's funny how the truth finally comes out after a few years, and I'm not the crazy one. So again, you cannot let the mainstream influence your decision making and disrupt your thought process. Because if you do that, you're going to be defunct. You will be mentally defunct, and you will be programmed like a robot. So it's important we go back and revisit these topics during this decade, because these are things that are monumentally shaping reality today. And if we just forget about these propagandized narratives and not get to the solution, then it'll just be programmed into our head for the next time. This just proves how obvious it is in the points that I make in previous videos about the government and mainstream media constantly attacking the people, trying to divide everybody. It's the ultimate goal of the New World Order, which we'll actually do an episode on next, about Klaus Schwab and all the evil globalists secretly running the world behind the scenes. This information is not easy to take in, especially for those who gave into the propaganda, because I think hopefully it wakes you up. It gives you, damn, the humility that I was wrong. I was fooled to believe something that wasn't even real. I think that's a big wake-up call, and it's important. It's a life lesson that'll help people go a long way. And that's why I want people who were disagreeing with me back then and who were for that narrative to see this now and understand there's a path forward, and it's the truth. We'll see you next time.